Backwaters offers a taste of the Essex marshes as they probably were in Roman times and beyond. There are places where the hand of man lies lightly on the landscape, where you can sail through a labyrinth of channels and islands, the shape of which have been designed by nature rather than man. You can sail past land that's submerged once every tide, or once a month, and sometimes marsh that disappears underwater just once or twice a year, but only when the moon and the sun drift into perfect alignment, just as a deep depression comes sweeping in off the Atlantic, or even worse, comes tracking down the North Sea. Google Earth allows you to trace the ghostly tracks of old estuaries and rivers that existed before the sea walls were built. You can make educated guesses about the size and magnificence of these estuaries and the thousands of acres of land rendered unproductive to man. You can see why it was worth claiming. And as you move inland and uphill from the permanent water in the channels, mudflats give way to salt marsh, which eventually changes into rough old reedy pasture before finally giving way to the good land that's permanently above spring high tide level. Most of this salt-contaminated soil is fit only for rough summer grazing by sheep and cattle. The walls here were built by the big local landowners, men who ruled these marshes 500 and more years after the Normans. They learned that systems of dikes and banks could be used to control the tides. Poor estuary pasture could be turned into prime agricultural land, the best there is. But these earthworks and banks weren't masterminded by the British. The people who knew all about fighting the sea lived just a short boat ride away in Holland. So Dutchmen flocked to this part of the UK, bringing their know-how, their technology, and their ability to take for man what once belonged to the sea. They knew about cutting channels through salt marsh. They knew just where and how to pile the spoil into sea walls, where to drive palisades of stakes into the mud to hold it firm against the sea, and to break the power of the waves that could destroy it in just one storm. They knew where the banks would need hard facing with stone and rock, brought here by the boatload. And it was the Dutch who showed the East Anglians how to build tidal gates and install windmills and pumps to lower the water table in the land they'd claimed from the sea. The Dutch, for their part, felt comfortable in flat Protestant East Anglia. All along this coast they left signs of their benign economic invasion, not just in the system of dikes and banks, but in the domestic architecture as well. The successful Dutch engineers, merchants and seamen of East Anglia built respectable buildings in respectable towns. So, just as the people of Cornwall have strong cultural links with the Bretons, so the Essex and Suffolk towns have, or maybe had, strong maritime and personal links with the Dutch and the Danes. And when the occasional Dutch classic yacht comes to visit, you can see the obvious design connections with our own Thames barges. Lee boards and square bows, barn door rudders. Even today, Dutch houseboats can be found up almost every river along this coast. And in the summer, visiting Dutch yachts easily outnumber those from France by a factor of 5 to 1. And it's no surprise that the labyrinthine channels of the Walton Backwaters are the setting for Arthur Ransom's book, Secret Water. But here's a confession, one that'll go down very badly with the locals, because Ransom is a bit of a hero to many of them. I have tried to read his stuff, I really have, but even as a book-devouring 9-year-old, I get 100 pages in, put the book down and could never quite find the strength to pick it up again. His swallows and amazons are even wetter and more annoyingly stuck up than Enid Blyton's famous 5. His heroines are called Susan, Bridget and Titty. There were, still are, small wharfs all over the backwaters, places where East Anglian grain could be loaded to feed the hungry mouths of Londoners, where horse hay could be stacked high onto barges for taking right into the heart of the city, and where cargoes of equine and human excrement could be sent the other way. Essex natives have always had to take a lot of crap from Londoners. I'm planning on visiting at least 3 of these little wharfs. There's Kirby Quay, tucked away behind Horsey Island, Beaumont Quay with its own canal, and finally up Oakley Creek to the hush-hush and still operational explosives dock in the northeast corner of the Backwaters. What a place to explore! And there's one other great thing about the Walton Backwaters. On the Google Earth pictures, the tide is almost out. For once, I'll have a decent idea of where the channel lies. Brilliant.